officially live on J. Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara, and my name is Wes Hagen, and I am the winemaker and brand ambassador for both the J. Wilkes wines, and I'm the brand ambassador, but not the winemaker for Ballard Lane, Barrel Burner, and Smashbury wines. And thank all of you for being so amazingly responsive as well as supportive of all of our brands, including, oh, hey, Curtis. Curtis is back and Ian's there. Ian sells grapes from Viennacito, Solomon Hills, and French Camp. So if you need, I don't know, at least 10 tons of fruit this year, let us know and we'll see what we can do hooking you up. Looks like Cheryl / Mark McPhillips is back on as well, and Victoria. Oh, Bill. Beautiful. And Victoria's there too. Again, for the people who are watching over here on Wes Hagen Facebook, you might want to go over to the J. Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page, where the quality is always a little bit better and my face doesn't seem quite as affected by the sunlight coming through the walls. But speaking of the sunlight coming through the walls, it's day drinking time, and today I promised you two things. I promised you part 2 of the history of wine, which is a fantastic story, one of my favorite stories ever told. A story I would love to tell on Drunk History sometime, but one thing they've never done on Drunk History is the history of human beings getting drunk. Now, if you know me, you know, even though I call it day drinking, I don't call it, drunk all day. I strongly believe that alcohol and human culture go hand in hand together. Alcohol and humanism go hand in hand. Alcohol and being a jerk go hand in hand. So I'm a strong believer that you are, when you drink, everything that you most truly are. So if you say I don't drink because I'm a jerk when I drink, no, you're a jerk. You're just very good at hiding it when you're sober. So again, I believe that alcohol is a prism. The only thing you can get out of alcohol is that what you put in it. Your personality when you drink becomes exacerbated. So I like to say you're more of who you really are. So the kind people tend to get a little more kind and generous and a little weepy when they get a little too buzzed, and jerky people just get jerkier. So I totally agree with Plato, who said that, basically drinking with someone for 4 hours at the symposia was probably one of the greatest ways to get to know them. So I'm going to start with something completely and totally weird today, which was an aquavit. This is an aquavit that is made by Venus Spirits, and it's a special release. Contains caraway, coriander, star of anise, juniper, and orange. So wouldn't that be a gin? No, it's an aquavit. Gin is generally a little less. This one has pretty amazing levels of these infused herbs. The anise, the juniper, maybe the orange, the coriander, and the caraway is what I would say takes us firmly out of being gin and into the point of being aquavit. So the question remains, after a full 1.5 ounces of 40 proof liquor, will the story remain the same? Nothing ever stays the same, but let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about J. Wilkes. Pinot Blanc. Let's talk about Pinot Blanc as a grape, and then let's talk about finishing the story from Julius Caesar to Louis Pasteur, where wine comes from and all that fun stuff. And then tomorrow, even though Tuesday is supposed to be just sort of open forum, one wine, shorter show, we're going to finish because Friday was Kat Cora's birthday party and our wines were part of her birthday celebration. I didn't want to steal away the thousands and thousands of people that would normally watch my show. Yeah. Oh, I think we did get one show almost to 2,000, so thank you for that. So tomorrow we're going to catch up with what we were supposed to teach on Friday. So that'll be basically Intro to Food and Wine Pairing Part 2. So we'll talk a little bit more about food and wine pairing tomorrow, and bring your questions on that for sure. All right, so Todd Goodman, there's a blast from the past. What's up, Todd? Todd and I went to... It's all good, man. University of Redlands together. That's fantastic. And looks like we've got Joanna and Bill and Kristen. And I will mention one more time, if you're over here watching at Wes Hagen Facebook, you can also go over to J. Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page where the quality is a little bit better. It says that on my page, so I'm going to let it go. There's also 2 charts, basically 2 maps that I've included for today's lesson, so we don't have to do it through Zoom. And it gets a little more confusing that way, and I never know where this is showing up. I wanted to make sure it was all over Facebook, and thank you for doing that. You can also consider right now, before we start the main content, is start a viewing party. You can ask any Facebook group you're in, hey, do you want to watch this crazy guy Wes Hagen do his Facebook Live? You can always do that. You can also do that after I posted the live video as a recorded video on the site. So do consider that. There's been some pretty good content here and we've been having some fun, but let's get to day drinking. Day drinking with Wes Hagen. So glad you guys are here. So glad you guys are all breathing, living on this gorgeous planet Earth. Remember, every breath is a miracle, and that every drink is a reason to spend another hour with the people we love at table. So aquavit, here's the water of life. Fennelly and delicious. Woo! All right, let's get into it. So first thing we're talking about is Pinot Blanc. So Pinot Blanc is a true genetic accession from Pinot Noir. Chardonnay turns out, no, not so much. It's Gouis Blanc, Tom's Pinot Noir. But Pinot Blanc is a pure genetic accession from Pinot Noir. What does that mean? That means one day Pinot Noir was growing in Burgundy, because that's where it's from. It really, at one point, only grew in Burgundy. And these grapevines were growing up, doing their thing in their vineyards, already domesticated. Pinot Noir was being grown to grow Pinot Noir wine in Burgundy. This probably would have been 300-400 years ago. So likely during the era of the Valois Dukes of Burgundy, and probably a little past the time of the most famous Valois Duke, who was Duke Philip the Bold, who in 1395 made the law in Burgundy that if it was a red grape, it could only be Pinot Noir. I guess he was just saying we're not drinking any effing Gamay, and the Gamay, obviously went north to Beaujolais, because at one point there was some Gamay in Burgundy. Pinot Blanc has actually been in Burgundy and was in a slight co-fermented part of some of the greatest Burgundies of Vosne Romani, including Romani Conti. So up to, I believe, 1974, Romani Conti would have had a little bit of Pinot Blanc in it. And if it was co-fermented, which means if they added the white grapes to the red grapes during fermentation, chances are you would have ended up having a darker wine by virtue of putting the white grapes in it. How is that possible? The same way that you put a little bit of Viognier in Côte Rôtie, 10% Viognier maximum into 90% Syrah, the wines with the added Viognier will actually be darker and more aromatic than the wines without Viognier. How is that possible? There is an enzyme within the white skins, basically an enzyme within the white skins, a pectic enzyme, that actually releases the red grape color from the skins of the grape. So all the grapes, all the color, and all the things that make a red wine red exist in these little vacuoles between the outer skin and the inner skin of the grape. And as it ferments, those puncture are released into the red wine, and that's where we go. And of course, and welcome Megan, and welcome Sue, and welcome Lonnie, and welcome Becky, and everybody else who's joining. Looks like Bill follows directions wonderfully and came over to the other side. And of course, Elaine and Scott are here from Vegas, and we're all making our plans, literally already making our plans. And then Michael Wilcox saying, not sideways at J. Wilkes Wine, Santa Barbara. No, you know me, I like to say sideways did for Pinot Noir what the Soviet Union did for socialism. Took us straight from Pinot Noir feudalism to Pinot Noir postmodernism without really making us do much work in between. All right, so let's talk a little bit. Whenever I show you guys how I open a bottle of wine, I'm going to use this great J. Wilkes corkscrew. And your two choices are to put the knife under the whole flange, or basically at the top of the flange above. I would recommend under the flange for someone who doesn't open wine very often, and I would recommend over the flange for someone who does. So I'm going to cut, whoops, and it just went right in the middle. So when it goes in the middle, I am going to do a fun little sommelier trick, which is to pretend I meant to cut it from the bottom the whole time. So I meant to cut it at the top. I missed up the very top of it, so I went down to the bottom and cut it pretty clean. All right, we've got natural cork on the top. These are actually Diem corks. They're made basically in a laboratory at Gallo. They do an amazing job. Now I'm going to put the corkscrew right through and make sure it's nice, and before I screw it all the way down, make sure it's nice and perpendicular. It's the only use of mathematics and geometry that you'll hear in this class. Once in a while I'll say, the leaf blade being acute or not. All right. Smells like peach skin. Smells absolutely delicious. All right, so we talked a little bit about Pinot Blanc. So Pinot Blanc being the genetic mutation from Pinot Noir. Let's see, what else is a genetic mutation from Pinot Noir? Well, Pinot Meunier, which is the third grape in Champagne, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier. And then you also, of course, would have Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris. Same grape, Gris, Grigio. I mean, Pinot just means the pine cone shaped cluster. It's the best description we have of why we use the word Pinot. The clusters are very small, they're very conical, they're very tight. Berries are very jammed in together, and as a result, it does. Pinot Noir cluster has that sort of pine cone shaped cluster. So our best idea of where the term Pinot came from was probably somewhere between the 12th and the 15th century in Burgundy, describing the shape of the cluster. So you have the pine cone shaped cluster that's black, Pinot Noir. You have the pine cone shaped cluster that is gray, which is Pinot Grigio in Italy, Pinot Gris. In general, Pinot Gris probably has a 10% better chance of being done in neutral French oak, and Pinot Grigio has a much better chance of being done in stainless steel, glass, or concrete, although any of those wines could be. And then so they're all genetic mutations, or genetic accessions would be the more accurate description from Pinot Noir. Pinot Blanc has its best expressions probably in the regions of the Alto Adige, which is, I guess, northwestern Alpine Italy, up by the border of Switzerland. Also the region where they grow a lot of Legrine, that beautiful red grape that we also use to make wine at J. Wilkes, that we'll be doing, I think, on Thursday or Friday. I did just post the next 2 weeks of the entire show. So you can see what we're talking about, what wines we're drinking. So for instance, if you want to find out about the Legrine, you can order the Legrine in time that you can taste it with me. And we got all kinds of other new cool stuff coming out with promo codes on the website and support. And we're putting all of these videos up on YouTube, either the J. Wilkes YouTube website, the Miller Family Wine Company website, YouTube website. And we're keeping all those to keep going. So what do you expect when you stick your nose in Pinot Blanc? It's sort of like Pinot Grigio grew up and developed a soul. I like to say that, friends don't let friends drink seltzer or bad Pinot Grigio, but Pinot Blanc, there's only about 350 acres left in California. So what we're talking about here is a bit of an endangered species. But unlike a white rhino, if you eat a white rhino, there's one less white rhino in the world, and you've really done no one any good. But if you drink a glass of Pinot Blanc, chances are that will make a dent in the data. And even though there's 3 million acres of Chardonnay, for every acre of Pinot Blanc in the United States, I think there's over 1,000 acres of Chardonnay. So you drink a bottle of Chardonnay, no one's really going to notice. But you drink a bottle of Pinot Blanc, it's the equivalent of drinking 1,000 bottles of Chardonnay. Doesn't that sound like fun? Drinking the equivalent of 1,000 bottles of Chardonnay, and all you have to do is drink a bottle of Pinot Blanc. So jump in and have fun. It looks like Michelle came in and John Brooks came in. Welcome. Susan Shea and Stephen South. Welcome, welcome. I'll keep breaking this up every couple minutes and making sure I notice if you're asking any questions. Kelly, Jeff Wilkes' sister, has arrived yet again. Thank you. And we've got Jolie, thank you again. Christy, who's an absolute, just been awesome as far as her support, thank you. Phil Carpenter from Santa Barbara County Vintners. Thank you, Vintners, for taking a very quick pivot in this entire COVID-19 BS, in the sense that you guys jumped in and asked, what can we do to help? Instead of sort of just sitting around and seeing what was going to happen, you guys were an active part of it. So we really appreciate that the Vintners has supported this show, and the Vintners is really making sure that everything that they have been doing continues to have a lot of traction through social media, through remote gathering, through all this stuff. So, but I'm getting so far away from this beautiful 2018 Pinot Blanc. I am going to tell you a secret about this wine. I did not make all of this wine. Some of this wine was made by a winemaker who's far more famous and experienced than I am. And that would be a Jed Steele. So this 2018 J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc, part of it, we found out as our data was skewing that people were starting to drink Pinot Blanc, and we are the largest domestic producer of Pinot Blanc, as far as I know. I don't think anyone makes more than a few thousand cases of Pinot Blanc like we do. But we didn't have enough Pinot Blanc last year. So when we looked at our basically our outlook on how much we needed to sell and how much we had in the tank, we realized we were low. So, I always want to make more Pinot Blanc, don't get me wrong, but we had to go out back into the market, and we did not want to use any grapes except the 47-year-old own-rooted Pinot Blanc at the Magic Vineyard, owned by the Miller family, to make this wine that if we put the vineyard's name on this label, we'd have to charge you 3 times as much for it. This is a $20 bottle of Pinot Blanc. I think that for a 47-year-old own-rooted vineyard that shows so much expressiveness, so much sort of slightly bright, unripe pear, some apple, but a lot of stone fruit. I get nectarine flesh. I get peach skin. I get sort of a blossomy kind of white flower aroma that just speaks beautifully of this vineyard. Also, just a little bit of that sort of chalky earth to let you know that this was grown someplace with vines that were probably old and on pretty serious soil. In the mouth, it's very lively. It's got a lot of concentration, but at the same time, it's light with amazing acidity and minerality. Certain sense to it, somewhere between kind of the like lime and lime blossom kind of verve, and then this beautiful chalky minerality that just coats the palate like, you're just like maybe just sucking on a rock, which I really appreciate. And then I just start thinking of hard cheese and oyster. Welcome, Richard. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Mikhail. I'm probably saying you're right. And Brett Long is back, my buddy from down in Santa Barbara. No, I've got a number of friends that are some of the best servers in California, fine dining servers that do it professionally and have their entire lives not waiting for their acting career to increase. Their acting career is their love of table, is their love of hospitality. And Brett has just been killing it for us down at Finch and Fork at the Hotel Canary in Santa Barbara. So let's give hope and know that as soon as we can get back out on the road and travel, the first places I really need to go is Santa Barbara, to eat and drink my way through Santa Barbara and all the places I miss. We got to go to Las Vegas, folks. Vegas is going to need our love as much as any city in the United States, and then San Francisco. I want to do Hog Island Oyster Company, and then do an appetizer at the Slanted Door, and then walk over for fried chicken and popovers over at the Wayfair Tavern with this Pinot Blanc. Fried chicken and popovers with a Pinot Blanc would be absolutely gorgeous. Also, Hog Island, I'm just saying, if I were to do maybe like clay pot chicken over at Slanted Door, or the cellophane noodles with crab, we could talk about 3 different restaurants, 3 of my favorite dishes in California, and all 3 perfectly appropriate for the J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc. Absolutely wonderful from that perspective. Stainless steel, 100% on this bad boy, so you're not going to get any oaky aroma. It's going to be bright, fruity, mineral, and lively. I think are going to be the words that really bring you back in. And welcome David Russell. I hope welcome. Originally a good friend of Jeff Wilkes. And David, you'll be happy to know Kelly, Jeff's sister, is joining us from Plano, Texas. And appreciate each and every one of you stopping in to listen. And again, I'm going to finish up a little bit of talk about this wonderful Pinot Blanc, and then we're going to do a little bit on the history of wine from the Roman Empire through Louis Pasteur, including why a grapevine exists in nature at all and why fruit is delicious. Have you ever wondered why nature made fruit delicious? Well, I'm going to tell you the honest truth, and it might be a little grosser than you think. It's a beautiful thing. 2018 J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc, 100% old vine, 100% own-rooted 47-year-old Pinot Blanc vines. Same sections of the vineyard that Jeff Wilkes used to use to make his own Pinot Blanc. And this Pinot Blanc is not vineyard designated. We keep it as a Santa Maria Valley AVA designate, so we can keep it at $20 a bottle on the website. And right now, I believe if you use the capital D 50, gives you 20% off all J. Wilkes wines and 1 cent shipping per case. So obviously that's an incredibly good deal. And we are going to look into continuing this video series, at least with our wine club, in perpetuity. We want to keep it going while we're all sort of on quarantine. Again, old joke, it's not really quarantine unless you're in Corinth, France. Otherwise, we're in sparkling isolation. I want to make sure that all of you know that the tasting room in Santa Barbara, we're actually still open, and we are actually delivering wine out to the curb in gloves smelling like hand sanitizer. If you are in need of wine in the Santa Barbara area, you can always call our tasting room and get a discount on cases, and then just have the folks down there carry it out to your car. So that's a possibility. And then you can order it through the internet with the capital D 50 promo code for the great deal on the shipping. And that shipping cost should work with the J. Wilkes wines. 20% off all J. Wilkes wines right now if you buy at least 6 bottles, I believe. Might actually be a case. I'd have to look into that. But the wines are already incredibly well priced anyways. But the J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc 2018 just got 91 points from the Wine Enthusiast. So that's exciting. And that was Matt Kettman. So thanks, Matt. He was a local guy. Very excited to get some good scores on this wine. Yes, Mark says he needs a drink. Get it. And this would be an excellent time. I'm going to pour myself a little more Pinot Blanc as I prepare myself to give you guys the quick and dirty summation of the last, 2,000 years of wine history. Remember the first time we did it, I got through 199,980,000 years of wine history. So the last 2,000 years should be able to go really, really quickly. And welcome to David Sheeline. A reserve Pinot Blanc. Well, 47-year-old Pinot Blanc, it's pretty much like a reserve. What would we do to a reserve Pinot Blanc? And how would we, because we make this wine in a stainless steel tank, it's kind of hard to say which little section of the tank made the best wine. Last thing I'm going to do to Pinot Blanc is turn it into Chardonnay. I'm not going to put any new wood on it. I'm not going to put any mallow on it. Pinot Blanc would be really hard to do a reserve blend of. We did a dessert Pinot Blanc in 2012. Actually, it was Vidal Perez, the winemaker before me at J. Wilkes, and Jeff Wilkes is one of his production winemaker helpers who took over the winemaking for a few years after Jeff's untimely passing. But Vidal made a really, really nice dessert Pinot Blanc. I think that's a way we could go. I think it's disingenuous to the grape to force it into a mold to make it into something like Pinot or Chardonnay by oaking it. To be honest, I want everyone to be able to afford a great Pinot Blanc from old vines and own roots. And I think that's what we got here right now. So I love the idea of that. Yeah, we could do some neutral oak, I guess, but what's the point? I guess to me, the point of stainless steel is to capture the moment of harvest exactly the way it is, with no French accent, to say this is how Pinot Blanc tastes out of stainless steel with no flavor affectation. I think Pinot Blanc in stainless steel is damn near perfect. So even though I love you, David, you're not getting an oaked Pinot Blanc from me. You can talk to other winemakers about that, but I think I'm going to stay with the stainless steel. But hey, if you get into Nicholas Miller's ear and he tells me to make an oaked stainless or an oaked Pinot Blanc, I'm not going to lose my job over it. I'll do whatever he says for me to do. But fortunately, he and I see very, very eye to eye on style. I've yet to have to make a decision in winemaking that didn't feel like a gut decision, because I've been very lucky to work for people that share my palate in fine wine. All right, so Pinot Blanc 2018, wonderful wine. What would I match with it? This was also, for the geeks out there, this was fermented cold in a stainless steel tank, at least the wines that we made, with EC 1118, which is Pre-de-Mousse, which is a Saccharomyces bianus yeast. What does that mean? It means it's much more vigorous than Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is the normal yeast we use to ferment grapes and wine, beer, and just about everything else, making bread. Bianus does not quit. Bianus goes until that wine is bone effing dry. So what you're going to find is you're going to get probably a little more dryness in the wine. You're going to get less than 2.5 grams of per liter of residual sugar. So the wine's going to come across as very dry, and that gives it its beautiful verve. It gives it its beautiful liveliness. The acidity is very, very lively and obvious. And that's what Pinot Blanc should be. It should be a wine that has beautiful fruit, beautiful liveliness, all this wonderful sort of stone fruit, peach, nectarine, a little bit of apple, a little bit of floral character, and then finish with bone dry acidity and a little bit of that mineral character. And that's why, for me, one of the greatest matches you can do with this is fried food. In fact, probably the best match I've ever had with Pinot Blanc in Alsace at the oh my gosh, at the Castle Isenburg, where we stayed, we had pan-fried frog's legs in a parsley cream sauce with a Pinot Blanc, and I will never forget that mash. I mean, I feel bad for the frogs. A lot of frogs going around in little, I think of that Far Side with all the frogs coming out of the kitchen, you know, basically in their wheelchairs. But it was worth it. That was damn good. And Bill and Marilyn, welcome. I'm going to scroll down, make sure I haven't missed any questions. Oh, cool. So we definitely had some folks ordering J. Wilkes wines today, and they want you to know that they got a 30% discount. So that's probably about the best discount you're going to get from these videos, because we don't want to go over the discount that our wine club gets, because then why in the heck would you want to be in the wine club? Because we treat our wine club extraordinarily well. So there you go. So how about that t-shirt? Yeah, so Phil Pierce really likes my t-shirt. I don't think there is a Furnace Lounge. This is like a J. Crew shirt that's probably just a fake shirt. You know, Scotch on the Rocks in Tahoe. Why not drink Scotch on the Rocks right now in Tahoe? It sounds like someplace I'd like to be, something I would like to see, that beautiful, beautiful, clean, beautiful blue water of Lake Tahoe. We know we're all in. Oh, thanks, Michelle. It's great to be here with you too. All right. 1 barrel? Michelle, so like, what are you thinking? Like one oaked barrel to blend in with all of the stainless steel wine? Let me just go out on a limb and say, with the amount of Pinot Blanc we make, somewhere, you know, a couple thousand gallons, even more than that, probably about 4,500 gallons a year. That would put the oak content of the wine at about, what, 0.1 or 0.2% new. I would say that it's not going to have enough of an impact on the wine to have a real, you know, now, let's go ahead and just say this right off the bat. When I made wine at Clos Pepe, every year I try to make a wine with Chanda that was completely just a barrel or two of a wine completely different than anything we've ever made. We'd go like super ripe, tons of stems, different yeasts, different oak, so we could prove ourselves wrong. More often than not, those wines that I made antithetically to the regular way that I make wine were some of my favorite wines I've ever made. So if I made a 100-case lot of Pinot Blanc and 100% new oak, it would probably be incredible, like unbelievable. Like I would end up saying, wow, why didn't we do this? So I should first of all say that I don't know, and that every time that I go against my own winemaking sense, I find out that wine kind of makes itself, and every style has a palate, and every style has a moment, and every style can be delicious. So a reserve Pinot Blanc, David Sheeline brought it up, and Michelle, who's been buying a lot of our wine, she starts talking about it. I'll bring it up at a production meeting and see what people think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would be a fun way to try, and maybe it'd be a cool way to, if you came to the tasting room or you got a 6-pack, 3 bottles of Pinot Blanc made in oak, 3 bottles made in stainless steel, you could taste those wines side by side and kind of get an idea of kind of what we're going on with them. Yes, the Pinot Blanc compared to Pinot Grigio, there's that old joke, like, you know, that I put on Pinot Grigio. That was the old Australian joke about American beer. You know, why is American beer like making love in a canoe? Because they're both effing close to water. I feel the same about Pinot Grigio, although there are some Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigios made in the Alto Adige and in Italy and a couple in the United States, especially in Oregon. Yes, California is going to say something nice about Oregon because Oregon never says anything nice about California. We're all in this together. Can't we all get along? That Pinot Blanc tends to have more body and more character and more flavor than Pinot Grigio. I think most winemakers would agree with that. And it's just got a little more depth. It's got a little more interest. And in general, Pinot Blanc is not made into a overly wrought commercial wine the same way. There's no equivalent of a Pinot Blanc in the Santa Margarita idealization. It just doesn't happen. All right, you guys ready for a story about the history of wine? Now, if and when, I would recommend at some point during the next 20, 25 minutes as I go through the last part of the history of wine, is that you do go and take a look at the two maps that I put out there. There's one blue map and one sort of white map. The blue map is the movement of Vitis vinifera and Vitis vinifera sylvestris throughout Eurasia over the last 10,000 years. Actually, about 2,000. Not 10,000, about 2,000 years. And then there is the temperature latitude index map of where grapes grow in context of between the 30th and the 50th parallel and between the lines of 10 degrees average Celsius and 20 degrees average Celsius. And those maps will be very, very helpful to you and for you to understand. All right, Janice, welcome, and Mark Ashamala. Good to have you back, man. I haven't seen you since Lompoc. So again, that's awesome. So glad you guys are here. Feel free to ask questions. I'm fairly constantly checking it out. And Michelle says she would fly out to taste the oaked Pinot Blanc. So that's definitely something I'll have to keep in mind. Last time we talked about the history of wine, we sort of left you guys basically after the grapevine had been domesticated and the Roman armies had been moving grapes over finally the Alps into modern Germany and into modern France, which was back then was Gaul, and up into the Alps and above the Alps and over the Subtyrol. Now, it's really important. For instance, something's really interesting happened, like the grape that got dropped off over the Alps was Traminer, which is a very famous, very highly planted white grape from Germany. And what they found is when they planted it in the colder northern climates of Germany, it picked up a spicy character, very, very bright and spicy, a lot of big floral character in the wine. Now, the word in German for spicy is Gewürz. So they basically put the term for, in German, you can basically just put as many adjectives you want and affix them to a noun and make a word, 85 letters long. So Gewürztraminer became the spicy Traminer in the way that Traminer expressed itself in the new region of colder climate viticulture as you went over the Alps. So that gives you an idea. And before Julius Caesar took grapes over the Alps, you couldn't, if you were found growing grapes in the Roman Empire over the Alps, you were in serious, serious trouble. So Caesar changed the laws, made it legal to grow grapes over the Alps, and then you basically have a massive expansion of viticulture within the Roman Empire, moving from that area throughout Western Europe and moving actually in its final destinations into Spain and England. All right. Whew. We can't go any further until I tell you why grapes exist. And grapes exist because to keep themselves alive, like we do. Every organism on the planet Earth is most interested in self-replication. So why do humans wake up in the morning? Theoretically, if you're a social scientist, you'd have a different answer than if you were a sex therapist. If you were a sex therapist, you would say, human beings wake up in the morning to either have babies, protect their babies, or do something to make sure that humanity exists in perpetuity. Grapevines do the exact same thing. A grapevine's job in nature is to make more grapevines. But a grapevine conquers its niche space incredibly well. So where does a grapevine grow in nature? In nature, it grows in a tree in a forested area, in a shaded area. In general, a bird, after having consumed delicious sweet grapes that attracted the bird to those grapes by virtue of nutriment, deliciousness, and sometimes intoxication, if those grapes happen to ferment on the vine, have consumed those grapes, and they're going to fly back to their nest or fly to a different part of the forest. And at some point, by virtue of randomness or some type of gut energy, the seed is passed through the bird's gut or the animal's gut, the squirrel's gut, and it lands in a different part of the forest. Remember, plants don't have legs. So plants come up with fairly amazing, advantageous ways of spreading their seed. Plants invented the wheel, because I guarantee the tumbleweed was rolling through the United States before they figured out how to make a wheel in Mesopotamia about 10,000 years ago. So whether it's a tumbleweed rolling through the forest or rolling through the desert, dropping off seeds as it goes, but a grapevine can't really roll. So what it does is it does what every fruit does on the planet Earth, to produce something that gives animals nutriment, deliciousness, and attracts them to eat the fruit and disperse the seed. So grapevines begin to, obviously all fruit produces sugar, but grapevines have a very cool sort of Guinness Book of World Records moment, and that is that grapes, the Eurasian wine grape, Vitis vinifera vinifera, produces more disaccharide sugar, in other words, fermentable sugar, than any fruit on the planet Earth. So if you want to make the strongest booze in nature, your choice is basically to make grape wine. Grape wine is the strongest alcoholic beverage on the planet Earth until the 12th century. What happens in the 12th century? The Catholic Church, in their Second Crusade, steals distillation technology from the Arabian Peninsula. Wait, the Arabs weren't making booze. They're freaking Muslim. What the heck were they doing? They were making essential oils, which for some reason are still on the shelves throughout the United States where toilet paper is gone. And they were also making perfumes, scents, cologne, and medicine. But it took a bunch of Europeans to see these alembic stills and to steal them and to bring them back to Italy and start making booze. And David Glancy, I got a master song right here on my Facebook Live. Stoked to see it. Ryan, thank you for being here. And Eric Christensen's here, and Cirrus is here too. That's fantastic. I love it. So you end up basically having a situation where grapes were producing the most highly alcoholic beverage on the planet. So before the 12th century, very important to have wine. If you were a king, a queen, a magnate, or a prelate, you would want wine with dinner every night because it showed you had the money and the wherewithal to make grape wine and have it available at your court. So it was a symbol of power. It was a symbol of wealth. All the way back to Ashurbanipal, who was an Assyrian king, and he was the king when they basically had the first opening ceremony of the one of the grandest cities in the ancient world, called Nimrud. It was called Nimrod in the Bible, and it was recognized as one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And this Assyrian king wanted to show his wealth. So in the bas-relief of the opening of Nimrod, which are still in existence and you can still see them in books, they have everyone there is drinking beer, except you can see that the king of Assyria is actually drinking wine out of a skin, which shows his power, which shows his wealth. And that was something, wine was far more rare and harder to get in the ancient world. Now, when we move into past the ancient world, really into the Roman era, again, just to kind of review for the people who weren't here last time we went through this, obviously the Greeks received wine culture from the Near East and Eurasia, and that's why that Bacchus and the Bacchic and the Dionysian religions believe that Dionysus came from Nisus, which is in Phrygia, which basically comes from the exact same region that we recognize where grapevines actually were developed, and the domestication event of Vitis vinifera sylvestris became Vitis vinifera vinifera. So the interesting idea is both of the kernels, both of the myths of where wine come from are absolutely geographically accurate. The Greco-Roman myth is that Bacchus Dionysus came from Phrygia, came from Eurasia, and brought the culture of the vine into Greece, and Greece gave it to Rome. Right? Accurate, because Phrygia is very close to the area of between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea where grapevines first were domesticated, and that was important. And then I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but then, Judeo-Christian mythology nails the history of wine down to the Noah myth, that there was a global flood and that God saved one man who happened to be a viticulturist. That's a pretty smart God. And when Noah landed on Mount Ararat, which is less than 200 kilometers from the basic understanding of where Mount Nisus is, Dionysus, the god of Mount Nisus. So you can see Ararat from Mount Nisus. So the two places where mythologically we believe that grapes were actually where winemaking and the culture of winemaking started are actually in the same damn area. So Greco-Roman and the Judeo-Christian myths both agree that, and history, science, and reality all also agree that this is where grapevines started, in this area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Now, the Romans started moving grapevines over the Alps into Europe specifically, and then when the Roman Empire died off somewhere probably between the around the 7th to the 10th century, and the Holy Roman Empire sort of took over. Charlemagne in Gaul, Charlemagne in France, and coronated in 800 AD. Charlemagne was actually coronated in the cathedral at Reims, and that was the first moment a sparkling wine was ever used in a celebratory fashion. So I love the idea we're right in the middle of the history of wine, and here's Charlemagne being coronated in Champagne, and the wine they consume is the sparkling wine of Reims, which marks the first moment where champagne wine is used for a celebratory purpose, which I think is a great story as well. So in the post-Roman era, when Rome plants Europe, the Carthaginians and the birds are all kind of moving grapes around too. Carthaginians much more important to Spain, birds moving grapes wherever they can eat the fruit, eat the seeds, and drop them in various places. But what's really interesting is in a post-Roman world, why do grapes change? Why are all the grape varieties not what the Romans left? We know what the Romans grew. We have very, very good records of the grapes that they grew and the names that they gave them, the quality of the wine, how much the wine was worth, what the quality of the wine was, and how it moved throughout the Roman Empire. They were incredibly detailed in these records, and we can read these records and understand a lot about ancient wine. If you're interested in it, I recommend a book by a guy named Younger, who wrote a book called Gods, Men, and Wine. It's a very hard book to find, but it's a very good book, and the Roman section of it is very thorough. So I like to say when the Romans left their vineyards behind to the native cultures that took over after with the Holy Roman Empire, the Eastern Holy Roman Empire, wherever grapevines were left, either they were tended by who were left by the Romans, or they were left to the native populations, or they were left to the church, or they were left to whoever managed to finagle in and grab those vineyards and start protecting them. And this is my speculation, and this is a speculation I've shared with Dr. Patrick McGovern at the University of Pennsylvania. He thinks it's a little goofy, but I'll put it out there for you just in case. And that is that whatever the Romans left behind was influenced by the local populations, their culture, specifically their food and their diet, and they allowed those grapevines the Romans left over the next, 200 to 500 years to sit and to mutate, and they kept the mutations that worked well with their local culture, with their local cuisine, their local preferences. So if you lived in an area that wanted to drink red wine, but the Romans never left you any red grapes, well, maybe you would wait for some of those white grapes to remutate into red varieties and start using those red grapes, you've got hundreds and hundreds of years and no internet to keep you company. You are sequestered without internet. So what are you going to do? Like what all humans do. This is the genius of human discernment, right? This is absolutely the genius of human discernment, in the sense that we had nothing to distract us. So our distractions were the production of wine, were the production of food, were the production of bread, were the production of all these things, science and understanding and mythology. So we were constantly trying to invent stuff. And as a result, the varieties that were left by the Romans were mutated by the local cultures to reintegrate them into the food that they ate on a regular basis. Cuisine is the most conservative of all local cultures. So whatever a local culture believes, the thing that they are least likely to give up is the food that they've eaten over the centuries, over the millennia. The mushrooms that live in the forest are going to be the same mushrooms. The animals that live in the forest, the hunting animals and then the domesticated animals that we've been eating for thousands of years are about the same. The fish we've been eating are the same. The shellfish we've been eating. If you live by the ocean for thousands and thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years, you could not aquaculture a lobster. You'd have to go and luckily catch a lobster if it lived off of your, and so whatever wine you would want or whatever beverage would want to match the conservative nature of the local cuisine. So I think that's very important. So the grapevines develop, the varietals develop, a lot of them develop in southern France, in the Languedoc. And in the Languedoc, you're going to see a huge influence on the grapes. Cabernet Franc, Pinot Noir, Mondeuse Blanche, Gouais Blanc, Pinot Noir. I already mentioned Pinot Noir. So Sauvignon Blanc is pretty important too. These are the grapes that really manage to basically be the mother grapes for almost all the grapes we recognize today. Those are the progenitor grapes, and the cauldron is southern France. That's really where a lot of this stuff happens. Obviously in Italy, a little bit of Greece, probably a little bit back in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. There's always going to be some development there because that's the cradle of wine civilization. Thank you, David. So that's really what's going to be going on, is all the local populations in Europe, in post-Roman Europe, are slowly developing these grape varieties that they absolutely love, and grape varieties that help their local economies sell wine as they move them and sell them in their local areas. So when Cabernet Sauvignon is finally developed from a mix of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, if it sells better than Cabernet Franc, of course, growers 500 years ago are going to pull out Cabernet Franc and put in Cabernet Sauvignon because, of course, they're going to be selling more wine. So it's a matter of economy. It's a matter of matching the quality of the local and conservative cuisine. And it's a matter of geology. Where are the Franks? Where are the Gauls? Where are the where are the Carthaginians? Where are all these cultures moving grapes around? And what do you want to drink? And are people brewing beer? Of course they are. Are they making wine? Yes. After the 12th century, are they making eau de vie and aquavit? Of course they are. So alcohol gets a little more complicated after the 12th century in Europe. You've got a lot of opportunities. People are drinking mead, people are drinking beer, people are drinking spirits, people are drinking wine. There's like honest to God champagne now that's actually sparkling. So there's all these different ideas and these different beverages moving around. And then all of a sudden, bam, 15th, 16th, 17th century, here comes the Enlightenment, here comes the Age of Exploration. Suddenly, Catholic ships are moving off to various lands where they're going to be establishing Catholicism. And wherever Catholicism travels, guess what else has to travel? Is wine for the Eucharist, wine for communion. And can we grow wine for communion in the New World eras and areas where we're going? So the first vineyards come in the 1500s in the United States, in New Mexico. So New Mexico is the first place anywhere in the United States where grapes are grown for wine production. A lot of people don't know that. And then, basically I look at New World winemaking, and this is about sort of the ending of the story, is that New World winemaking is mostly just sort of arrogant thievery, getting better and better at giving the world what they want. Here's the point. And Doug, thank you for coming in, and David's here as well, and Tony, welcome in. Sandy gave us our first rescued greyhound, so love those greyhound dogs. If you've never had a dog or you need a dog in your life to give you some love, think about an X-Track racing greyhound. They sleep 20 hours a day. They don't bark, they don't smell, they don't shed. They are the most awesome pet dogs in the world. And when you walk one down the street, it's like suddenly being in your own like rock star sort of like kind of like Art Deco movie. You look like you just like walked out of like the Empire State Building in 1937. I don't know if it was there in 37. I hope it was. But they're jaw-dropping, like traffic-stopping, beautiful. Love me some greyhounds, have to say that. So in the end, the sort of end of the story of the history of wine is that Europe produces these few hundred varieties that some are more popular, some gain and lose popularity in the Iberian Peninsula, in France, down in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, what we recognize today, down in Italy and Greece, over in Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia. There is a different wine culture that kind of holds on to its own sense. I would say there is a Transcaucasia wine culture that has never had the opportunity to have the most money and the most technology. So it's always been a little bit hamstrung by its own rusticity. And then you have Italy, which basically has, basically is more, between Italy and France, you can argue, has more influence on the world of wine than any countries. Italy being very differentiated by the south being rather poor, the north being a little more wealthy, Sicilian wine, southern Italian wine being a little more affordable, northern Italian wine being a little more expressive, expensive, and a little bit more highfalutin. Of course, France, I would say, produces the best and the worst wine in the world. I've had basically the worst wine I've ever had has been a French bottle, which was natural wine, which had just gone completely and totally off. Sorry, Alice Fearing. That's just how it was. And the greatest bottle of wine I've ever had, which was probably a 1972 Louis Trepet Chapelle Chambertin Grand Cru that I drank in 1999 during the impeachment of Bill Clinton, who our French host said, "This man, he must be very busy because us French, we have affairs too, but we do not do this in our office." That is, obviously, this man is very serious about his job. Otherwise, he would have done it in an area very different. I always found that was a very incredibly and wonderful French attitude. So what is wine culture and wine history where we are sort of right now in the world? Well, we're in the golden age, right? We are absolutely in the golden age of wine. Never before has wine had higher quality and a less price of admission. Never before have you been able to basically go and throw 1 hour of, if you look at the minimum wage, average minimum wage of human society and what it would take to drink a great bottle of wine, I would argue that the bottle of wine that the average American can buy with 1 hour's wages is better than the wine that was being consumed by kings, queens, magnates, prelates, prime ministers 100 years ago. Period. End of story. $2 Chuck is probably more delicious than Romanée Conti in the 17th century. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe terroir just completely and totally took over, and these winemaking techniques and the lack of sulfur dioxide and the lack of modern science and the lack of germ theory, the lack of the compound microscope, the lack of the understanding of the microbial world. Maybe just, that Romanée Conti was so damn good that it was better than oxidation. It was better than, it could stop the process of turning itself into vinegar. I just don't know. But my guess is the greatest wines in the world are being made right now. The greatest wines in the history of mankind are being made right now. And the fact that you can go out to Trader Joe's and buy 10 bottles for under $10 and put them in a cellar somewhere and come back in 10 years, and my guess would be 8 out of 10 would be better. $10 wine can go 10 years. It really can. So we have come from 200 million years ago the cracking and the breaking up of Pangea into the continents that we recognize today, and the breaking of Vitis ampelopsis into the American and the Eurasian subspecies of the grapevine. If you go back hundreds of millions of years to the first thing that ever happened on this planet where there was a chemical bond exchange that produced energy, that was single-cell fungi, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, turning disaccharide sugar into energy. It's very hard to describe the natural history of the world without talking about fermentation. And it's very difficult to talk about the development of human civilization without talking about intoxication. It's hard to talk about spirituality without talking about intoxication. It's hard to talk about society, democracy, Greece, Rome. If you look about what influenced us as Western culture, you cannot divorce the idea of alcohol drinking and the fact that we got through pretty much 400 or 500 years of our natural history by drinking alcohol when all of our water sources and all of our rivers were so damn polluted that if we drank the water from our rivers, we would have died. So I would like to propose a toast to alcohol, the reason for and the solution to all the world's problems. Tastes pretty damn good. I hope you all have something delicious in your glass. All right. It's hard just to talk without intoxication. It's hard just to talk without intoxication. It's funny because I work really hard to stay sober all day, so when I come in front of you, I can talk about intoxication. Now, if that is not one of the most sort of ironic things I've ever said. And Peter, welcome. Oh, one neutral barrel. Fire sign theater, where there's smoke, there's work. Someone else knows about the fire sign theater. I had a really good friend in college who told me that if I wanted to be a proper hippie, that I should go back to the source material and listen to this fire sign theater. That's awesome that you brought up the fire sign theater. I haven't heard that about too much. And Bill, salute and cheers to you as well. Well, I hope that my large shot of aquavit at the beginning of this presentation about an hour ago had no negative influence upon the fun or conversation that I gave. I wanted to show that moderate to mild ethanol intoxication in the human brain does nothing but whet our brains and help us say something clever, as Aristophanes wrote in 424 BCE. And then if you guys have any questions, I'm going to be slowly closing this up in the next 10 minutes. But this is the portion of the conversation where I sit back, drink a little more and talk a little less, and open it up to whatever you guys have to say. So I hope you guys have had a wonderful time talking and listening. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And looks like Allison just came in. And thank you for that. And of course, once we are finished with this video, we will we'll go ahead and repost the entire thing, so you guys can make fun of me in any way you find interesting. As you think about sort of all this wonderful stuff and the Pinot Blanc and the J. Wilkes and the history of wine and everything from Pangea to Pasteur. Didn't talk a lot about Pasteur, but Pasteur basically used Leeuwenhoek's microscope to discover the kinetics of fermentation in the 1850s and 1860s, and basically helped us understand how fermentation helps. And as a result, by a complete byproduct, really wanted to know why beer was going bad, but in the end, it ended up figuring out why people died of infection. So as a result, everything we're doing right now to try to help the world not be infected or die from COVID-19 can easily be traced back to alcohol, can easily be traced back to wine and beer, because that's exactly what Louis Pasteur was studying when he invented germ theory, which is the basis for all clinical medicine in the world today. Before germ theory, before Louis Pasteur understood why alcohol fermented, surgeons would move from an autopsy to a live surgery without washing their hands or changing their clothes, and put putrefied hands inside of a live human body because they had no idea that's how germs work. Why did we understand that sanitation was important? Was because of Louis Pasteur and his study of fermentation and why beer goes bad. So how lucky are we? And I think we should all have a beer tonight and toast to Louis Pasteur, and understood that we might have been 40, 50 years retarded in our understanding of microbial science without Louis Pasteur. And we needed every day between Pasteur's germ theory and today to get us to a better place and a safer place. Miss Robin, welcome. And Jonathan Newman, welcome. It's good to see you guys. I'm drinking 2018 J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc. And your 10 seconds is strictly commercial. It's available on the J. Wilkes or Miller Family Wine Company website, either millerfamilywines.com or jwilkes.com. And it's $20 a bottle, and you get a special deal on it. Thought I either saw a neighbor out my window or someone delivering me fun things. Well, it's always fun day drinking with all of you fine folk. And Paul, welcome back. So nice to have you again. Let's see. How should we sort of close up tonight? Got a couple more minutes. I know someone, I thought. I'm looking for questions because I always do. And Timmy, I don't know if Tim Skogstrom's still on, but man, I love me some Timmy and I miss you, dude. Russ Briley. Hey, Russ, I just had the 2015 Nugasiant Cellars Clos Pepe Pinot Noir that you left me. It was drinking gorgeous. I think it had another 5 to 7 years in it. Russ was a journalist down in Ventura and also a very talented home winemaker who used to buy ridiculously expensive grapes from me at Clos Pepe Vineyards back when I was the vineyard manager and winemaker back there with my wife. And damn, if those wines didn't come out well. You definitely, I think, had the skills to go pro with those, Russ. So congratulations. And if you have more of that wine, I would definitely have another bottle, because it's the hardest thing about having one bottle of a wine when you drink it. I always say you should drink it on the way up more than on the way down. But you got to be careful with it, right? Let's see. I'm trying to think. Did I bring up all the stuff I wanted to talk about? Oh, the map. You can easily figure out how the grapes moved from Transcaucasia all the way through Europe, North Africa, and up into Western Europe and eventually to England. But there's another map that I posted on my or on my Facebook, as well as the J. Wilkes Santa Barbara, Wine Santa Barbara Facebook page, that shows where grapes exist in the world. And it's mind-blowing because it almost makes you think that the numbers were invented to talk about wine. And I'm talking about two of the most important things that we can ever describe in agriculture and geography: latitude and temperature. So if you take in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere between 30 and 50 degrees latitude, and 30 degrees and 50 degrees latitude in the southern hemisphere, and then within the 30 to 50 degree, make a subset between average of 20 degrees Celsius and 10 degrees Celsius, and then put those bars on the map, you will see the map that I provided for you. And you will see a few things. Number one, why the west coast of the United States is totally stoked, because we have a huge bulge in the 10 to 20 degrees and the 30 to 50 degrees latitude. Hello, California, Oregon, Washington. It's basically like Europe in a small little unit. And then you look at Europe, there's another big bulge around Europe. You look at South America, there's a big bulge between sort of Chile and Uruguay up into a little bit of Brazil. Also makes me wonder, Brazil has a number of areas that are within that magic sort of Goldilocks zone. So it kind of makes me wonder why there's still that I have never tasted an amazing Brazilian wine. And then you go over to Europe, and there's another big, amazing bulge with the temperature latitude index and around Europe. And then you realize why China's kind of screwed is because the latitude index and the temperature gets down to like this little tiny kind of like thin kind of band. And I think that's one reason why. And then it re-expands and gives Japan the opportunity to grow great wine. Really? Japan? Hell yeah. If you've never had a koshu, stainless steel koshu, Japan, the Dutch established a trading relationship with Nagasaki through this little trading village called Dejima. And it was there, I think, from about 1520 to about 1723. I happen to know about this because of this crazy writer named David Mitchell, who wrote a book called The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet, which talks all about, basically, it's a historic fictional novel set within Dejima, within Nagasaki, between 1599 and 1630, or is it 1699? I'd have to go back and look. I think it's 1599. But really, really interesting stuff. But if you've never had a koshu from Japan, the Dutch brought some grapes from Europe over to Japan, and the koshu is a pink grape. It's one of the most interesting and bright colors of a grape you'll ever see. And it makes a delicious white wine that is somewhere in between sort of like maybe like a Pinot Grigio and a Marsanne. Has a little bit of oiliness, kind of very spicy, and it's quite delicious, crisp and bright. And if you've never had a koshu, I've had stainless steel koshu, I've had oaked koshu, and I've had sparkling koshu. And the stainless steel koshu from, I want to say, Pride Vineyards. And I know that's a California winery too, but I think this was one south of Osaka. So that's another option too, is make sure. I always say we're students of the universe, we're students of the world. Let's go out there and drink wines from funky regions, from funky areas. Really love that. Sam, welcome. And thank you, David. I hope everything's beautiful down in northern Santa Barbara County. And Rachel, I'm glad you came. Thanks for sharing and thanks for being here. Michelle, thank you for calling me intriguing. Oh, I hope I'm coming to your Instagram tasting. Sounds like something I would do. I'll go back and look at emails and make sure I'm signed up. All right, so I do have one last question, which I'll answer from Michelle. Why do you think Vitis vinifera is so good, while, say, native grapes to the U.S. are usually so different? Norton's a hybrid. Here's the deal. Native American grapevines just don't produce that much disaccharide sugar. I don't want to break it down and say it's all a matter of how much alcohol is in the wine, but that's where we start. That the reason why Vitis vinifera, the European grape varieties, are so well loved throughout the world, I have to starts and ends probably with the fact that they produce the strongest alcoholic beverage in the world without distillation. Also, American grapevines tend to produce what's called a sort of a foxy flavor. And that just says, if you love, like I don't mind foxy all that much because I grew up drinking Welch's grape juice. So when I have a wine that has a little bit of foxiness, it just kind of reminds me of drinking grape juice as a kid. Maybe that takes me away from the complexity and the idea that I'm drinking a fine wine. And that's maybe why I don't buy Concord wine very often. Kind of has that Manischewitz kind of character to it. Nothing wrong with it per se. Now, if we grew up with the idea that if it smelled like Manischewitz, it was worth $1,000, well, both kosher wine and wine made from Native American varieties like Concord would be incredibly popular and expensive. The idea is the people we learned wine from were Eurocentric. And the idea from a Eurocentric perspective, if you show people American wines, unless they're grown from the Noah varietal and they're grown, somewhere in the Cahors where they still really enjoy American wine from a grape called Noah. It's a Eurocentric perspective. That's the beginning and the end of it. It's Eurocentric, but it started with the idea that American hybrid wines smell a little bit off, and people in Europe were forced to drink that style of wine during the phylloxera scourge at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And as a result, I think they recognized that the flavor of American wines reminded them that they could not drink their local wines because of a problem and a disease that started in the United States. So it's partly, I think, a little bit of a reaction against the United States after phylloxera in the 19th and early 20th century, a result of the flavor of wine grapes in the United States being incompatible with the European palate, and the fact that those things that are fancy and European always get a little more love in American culture. Norton is a hybrid, and Norton has done an amazing job as a hybrid, hiding the American flavor. So one reason, I hate to say, why Norton might be the best American European hybrid, European French or American French hybrid, is you can't tell it's an American French hybrid. It's sort of like that, vegan cheese that really tastes like cheese. It's so good you don't even think that you're eating vegan cheese. I've been a vegan. I've been a live raw vegan. My wife has been a vegan. We're plant-based. We try to be plant-based in our household. Here's my rule. If it's something that has a name that tries to convince you it tastes good, but it's actually just an approximation of something that is delicious when you eat the real thing, I don't like it. If I'm going to eat nuts, I want to eat nuts. I don't want to eat a nut pate that pretends to be cheddar cheese. If I want to eat cheddar cheese, I'm going to eat cheddar cheese. If I want to eat nuts, I'll eat them in their natural, delicious form. I love food. I love all kinds of food. I love vegan food. I love carnitarian food. Even, I don't love foie gras, but once in a while, a little bite of foie gras reminds me just how rich the world can be. But in the end, we eat delicious things, we drink delicious things, we get together, and we make connections. And I hope that this little video has done a little bit of that for you today, and that if you didn't catch the whole thing, you'll go back and check it out. And if you find it interesting, get a watch party on. I want to get some more views on here. My boss does actually check how many people are watching, and I want to make sure that enough people continue to watch and continue to buy wine that I can continue to hang out with you guys. So we want to keep this as kind of minimally commercial as possible, but I will finish today with both a drink, because it is day drinking, and there is some beautiful sunlight out today, even though it rained all last night, which was wonderful. But I certainly will encourage you guys to go over to either jwilkes.com or millerfamilywines.com, and don't forget DD50, Day Drinking 50, DD50, capital D 50 for your promo code. Gets you 50% off all Miller Family Company wines except for the J. Wilkes, and you get 30% off J. Wilkes over there, and 1 cent a case shipping. Buy some wine, get some wine in your house. It's more important than toilet paper, I guarantee. You can always take a shower, but you can't make wine just from shower water. So cheers. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I will be back tomorrow with a brand new show, and we're going to be talking about food and wine pairing tomorrow, and solving the rest of the world's problems in food and wine pairing, and how to stay happy while staying in your house dealing with your either very well behaved or very poorly behaved children, dogs, husband, wife. Show some love, show some compassion, show some patience. Have a glass of wine after they go to sleep. Cheers, everybody. I hope you had a good time, and we'll talk tomorrow. See you at about 4:50 tomorrow. I always log on about 10 minutes early to get my yips out, to make sure the feed is good, and to take any questions that you guys might have. So have a wonderful time. I hope all of you had a fabulous time on Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. Get out there and have more fun. And remember that wine is an investment to keep the people we love at table for an extra hour every day. Have a great night, guys. Love the one you're with, and love the wine you're with.